Story 1. Finally telling my decade-long crush that I have always had a crush on him, and his response being, "I have always had a crush on you too." Story 2. My fiancé cheated on me 3 days before our wedding. I had my life all planned out until that point. I had a good job and what I thought was a good partner. Instead of marrying a girl from my hometown and probably living there forever, I eventually met another woman, quit my job, and followed her over 800 miles to a new state. Here we are 20 years later, married with 3 kids. Story 3. My wife passed away right when we were retiring. We had plans to travel, help take care of the grandkids, and live out the rest of our lives together. Now I feel lost. I want to thank everyone who responded for their kind words and encouragement. It has been a tough 18 months since she passed. It was unexpected, so we had no time to prepare, as some of you know from your comments. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Online communities can be tough sometimes, but there are also nice and compassionate people out there. Story 4. The man following my girlfriend's car all evening was, in fact, the serial killer the Federal Bureau of Investigation was looking for. Story 5. Waking up to find my boyfriend dead has been devastating. It has been 4 years now, and I still miss the life we shared every single day. Story 6. For about 15 years, I have been overweight with high blood pressure and cholesterol. My doctor suggested I should probably take medication, but I thought, I guess I should try to lose weight or something. I don't know. There is a lot of obesity and heart conditions in my family. I caught a minor cold and lost my appetite, and then I caught another minor cold a week later, resulting in a loss of about 15 pounds. I decided not to regain that weight and eliminated all desserts, chips, fried food, mindless eating, and cleaning my plate. Instead, I replaced ice cream and cake with fresh fruits. Since October, after getting that first minor cold, I have lost over 50 pounds, 3 pant sizes, gained a lot more strength, and have significantly more energy and fewer random pains. I started doing much more strenuous yard and housework, and my arms and chest are beginning to look good instead of flabby. I owe a lot to that minor cold. Story 7. Realizing that it doesn't actually follow a plot. The twist is about making peace with the beautiful chaos. Adulting, right? Story 8. I just found this out yesterday while talking with my mom. Apparently, when I got accepted into university, my dad told her that if she wanted to send me there, she would have to do it on her own, which she did. A day after saying that, he invited my cousins, his siblings, and friends to eat pizza at a fancy place, but he didn't invite me. Story 9. I found out that my parents were not actually biologically related to me. As an embryo, the fertility clinic they used accidentally implanted an entirely different couple's embryo. Story 10. Hitting 30 without getting pregnant. My mom, oldest sister, and youngest sister all had children before turning 23. I am the middle daughter and the only girl in my family who has made it to 30 without children. Story 11. A casual conversation led to my immigration to the United States and changed the course of my life and my descendants. Butterfly effect. Story 12. Meeting and marrying the love of my life at 60. I have had many relationships, but this is the one. Story 13. A head-on collision with a semi-truck in 2017 resulted in a near-death experience and left me with multiple physical issues and post-traumatic epilepsy. Story 14. I had never really known love while growing up, but around my 19th birthday, I was finally stable enough to get to know myself. I had to admit I was gay, joined a dating website, and my now husband was the first person to send me a message. I expected some casual encounters and some failed relationships before finding someone to settle down with, honestly not even expecting that last thing to ever happen. Instead, I found the best partner I could wish for. We moved in together 2 years later, got married after having been together for 5 years, and this year marks our 15th anniversary. Life improved after meeting him, and I honestly didn't expect that to happen. I realized that finding love is pretty much expected for everyone, but if you grow up with abuse and thoughts like, I'm unworthy of love or not lovable, believe me, finding love actually feels like a plot twist in that case. Finding stability in life even becomes a significant plot twist. Story 15. After a betrayal, a broken heart, and relocating, I ended up marrying the man of my dreams. Good things can always happen. Story 16. I saw a cute guy at Taco Bell when I was 10. His mom turned around, and she is my mom's former coworker. Now we have been married for 18 years, and our moms are great friends. Story 17. I started working at a major bank call center 2 weeks after I turned 18. After about 5 months, they announced their annual employee development program. Only 15 employees are chosen from over 3,600 each year. When I asked my manager for permission to apply, she laughed and said sure. I got in. The manager was frustrated, but it was an invaluable program. It was extremely rigorous yet very beneficial, and I wish I could participate every year. It laid the foundation for my entire career. Story 18. Delivering triplets at 25 weeks gestation, spending 6 months in the neonatal intensive care unit with them, and eventually losing 2 of them within a month. Additionally, being a full-time caregiver for my mother when she developed Lewy body dementia resulted in the loss of my career and negatively impacted my mental and physical health during that period. Story 19. I feel I will not go far in my life despite all my efforts because they were directed in the wrong way. I wish I had supportive parents instead of controlling ones. Story 20. I married an immigrant who is older than me and has 4 children. Nobody supported our relationship at the beginning. Her siblings urged her to break up, saying I wouldn't last 6 months before wanting a divorce. My parents expressed similar concerns, suggesting she was only interested in citizenship. I was 22 at the time, and her children were teenagers. However, I quickly gained the acceptance and trust of her family. It has been 6 years, and we are still together. Story 21. I have always felt sorry for my mother's past and made excuses for her behavior. She lost her identity and ability to speak up, becoming a people pleaser. I believed I must save my mother and give her the life she never had. I felt unlovable and blamed the world for my sad past. Now, at the age of 30, I finally realized she is a narcissist and the source of most of my traumas. She turned every family member against each other with her web of lies. I recognized that I was adapting her behavior. When it dawned on me, it felt like grief I had never experienced before. This was definitely a lesson that, no matter what we think, we can be completely blind to certain situations. Story 22. I am now engaged to the boy I saw as my best friend in high school. We had a significant falling out in 2017, and I was completely sure we would never meet or speak again. Story 23. My mom is taking accountability for her actions for the first time in 20 years. I was convinced that we could never have a relationship, but she has really been working on herself and making changes. Story 24. After decades of being with family and hearing them say, "Family is important. Always be there for family," I removed every toxic family member from my life who chose to remain stagnant instead of growing. I have never been happier. I have accomplished more without them and have become a better person and parent. My life has been much easier without them. The people I cut out include aunts, uncles, cousins, and my mother. Relatives would constantly bring me down, tell me what to believe, and criticize me for having different feelings. It was easy to eliminate that negativity from my life. Story 25. Realize that we are all just 10-year-olds in different age bodies, and no one really knows what they are doing. Story 26. Sobriety at 35 coincided with the realization that I was still waiting for permission, unsure from whom, to live my best life. Perhaps I was waiting for direction. I understood that I needed to take charge of my life myself because it is the only life I have. Sobriety helped me immensely to get grounded in reality and become my favorite version of myself. Story 27. Realizing I'm with someone I met 28 years ago who seemed so out of my league and with whom I was just friends. Now he is my life. Story 28. I moved to a new city for college where my entire friend group also decided to go. We had all drifted a little, not hanging out as much as we did in high school. Finally, we decided to have a girls' night after about 2 months of settling in. My friend's boyfriend had a roommate who was very interested in me. She wanted to stay with her partner that night and begged me to come. I was drunk and eventually gave in, sleeping in the bed with the roommate. I fell asleep probably within 20 minutes. We never kissed or anything. We were just cuddling because I was very drunk. He sexually assaulted me that night, and all of them took his side and basically said I was lying. I lost every single one of my friends, was living in a new city, and was not close with my family at all. I was pretty much completely alone for about a year and a half. It changed my life forever, for the better, but that experience was incredibly difficult. Story 29. Me. I'm a personal trainer. Grandma. Oh, like a physiotherapist? Me, not yet, but you're on to something. Cut to 2025 and here I am, a physiotherapist. Story 30. I ended up hospitalized with kidney failure after experiencing a serious asthma attack at the end of a physical test for a highly lucrative job. Story 31. Marrying my extremely toxic ex's childhood best friend was unexpected. Years after the relationship ended, we reconnected. Now we own a home and have our own family. I often tell him how amazing it is that everything turned out this way. Story 32. As an adult, my body sometimes abruptly decides to give up, which I did not expect as a child. Story 33. Marrying the boy who took my seat in class and then told me, "I don't see your name on it," when I claimed it as mine. That was the happiest plot twist of my life. We have been together for 10 years, married for 7 years, and we have 2 beautiful children. One of the best days of my life was when he took that chair during our senior year. Story 34. My body suddenly broke down at 40 due to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I was born with it but was diagnosed 10 years ago. I am basically bedridden now, which was unexpected. My life before was an adventure, so this change has been sudden and extreme. Story 35. I bought and remodeled my own house. I was extremely proud when it was completed. 6 months later, plot twist, it burned down. The fire was a freak accident, so I had no one to blame. I went from being independent to feeling scared of my own shadow. It took a year to rebuild, so I lived at my parents' house, which, although I was grateful for, was not ideal. You don't get compensation for everything you lost. You only get low prices for items. I lost everything I owned. My grandmother's wedding band, my first teddy bear, my diaries, my festival tickets and Polaroids, my concert tickets, my favorite jeans, my coffee mug, my lucky underwear, all my possessions and all my memories. Story 36. I am an introvert, and for more than 10 years, my friends always told me I would never meet the love of my life at home. I met my now wife 13 years ago on a social media platform because of my profile picture. Me on the couch with my cat on my chest. Story 37. Moving without warning from the East Coast to the Midwest. I was living with my son and daughter-in-law, but she no longer wanted me there. The only affordable apartment I could find was in Michigan, while I was living in Pennsylvania. I never expected to move 1/3 of the way across the country, away from my family and friends, out of the blue. Story 38. I became pregnant and had my son at 16. When I was 17, he started having seizures. It turns out he has a rare form of epilepsy, cerebral palsy, autism, sudden onset respiratory failure, and several other medical conditions. He is now 20, and I have spent over half of my life caring for him, as he has never progressed past the age of 3. I love him deeply, but I never expected our lives to turn out this way. Story 39. I pursued a girl for years and did everything for her, but she placed me in the friend category. A day before she died in a car accident, she admitted that she was attracted to me the entire time and was just nervous. It was the worst plot twist ever. Story 40. My relationship of 13 years is causing me intense pain and misery. The person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with is mentally harming me. After spending half of my life with him, I realized how much I have missed out on, but I still can't imagine life without him. I never imagined that the person who loved me so deeply and holds my heart would be the one to belittle me, mentally abuse me, and disrespect my boundaries, wants, and needs. I never thought I wouldn't be allowed to sit on my couch for space or read my Bible in peace. I wasn't allowed to be on my phone too much, and I was told last night that confiding in another person about the troubles in our relationship is considered cheating. His example was, if you go to another person saying, "Oh, he did this or he said this and is pissing me off," that is considered cheating. He also didn't want me to go to therapy, which initially made no sense to me. He said, "You can talk to me," implying that the therapist would tell me to break up with him. This was 4 to 5 years ago. I do not feel safe in my own home. Story 41. A few days after breaking up with my boyfriend of 4 years, he got into a terrible accident and needed his leg amputated. He hasn't moved out yet and asked me to quit my job to be his full-time caregiver. Story 42. Failing a suicide attempt resulted in having to cut out certain friends who I thought actually cared. Turns out that even if you are struggling and showing obvious signs of self-harm, some people won't care, especially those you thought were your friends. Story 43. A girlfriend left me, along with her dog and 2 cats, after I moved across the country from my hometown at 25 years old. I relocated for her, leaving behind everything I knew, including many friends. I rented an apartment with a 1-year lease, and within weeks, she left me and her pets. I took care of all the animals throughout the lease, but when I moved, I returned her dog and kept the cats. I had my own dog and feared she might have put her dog down. I met my now wife a little over a year after the first girl left me in a tantrum late one night. She claimed I was the unreasonable one. My wife and I have been together for 24 years, and we have been married for 20 years. Story 44. Just because someone is an adult doesn't mean they know anything. Many adults simply lack understanding. Story 45. I ended up getting my dream job out of college because, at the last minute, I found out that I was an alternate for a recruitment event and someone canceled. I was never informed that I was an alternate until I was invited to be flown to the event. So I had assumed over a month ago that they had no interest after speaking with them at a career fair. Story 46. My direct supervisor betrayed me for something I had no control over or involvement in. His supervisor supported me, recognizing that it was not my fault at all, so my job was safe. However, witnessing how quickly my supervisor shifted blame and the disrespect he showed by criticizing me for something I didn't do prompted me to update my resume. A few months later, I secured a new job and moved to a new city by myself at 23 years old. It was the best decision I ever made. My life changed for the better, all because my boss acted unprofessionally. Story 47. Realizing that my mother had early-onset dementia was difficult. She used to be somewhat narcissistic, and I was on the verge of going no contact, but I changed my mind when I learned of the diagnosis. She passed away earlier this year, but after almost half a decade with the disease, I managed to create meaningful moments with her. I will cherish those memories for the rest of my life, even if it was a challenging time. Story 48. My mom passed away. She was extremely religious and homeschooled my brother and me, so I grew up incredibly sheltered. She passed when I was 13, and my dad put us in public school. While it took some time, I learned how to function like a normal person. I have a friend who was the child of my mom's best friend, and he was raised the same way I was. He has clearly been held back by his upbringing. I've grown to be a confident, outgoing, and perceptive person. He is naive, immature, and inexperienced. He represents who I might have become. I love him dearly. He's a genuinely good person but is held back. I miss my mom more than anything in the world and would give up everything to have her back. But I wouldn't be who I am today if she were still around, and I quite like the person I've become. My life is beautiful, and my future is brighter than I ever could have imagined. It's all very confusing and an emotional conflict I never expected. P.S. Don't homeschool your kids. You may hinder their future. Story 49. 1. My first husband moved me to a cult farm where I was called the Black Woman. My second husband died months after our wedding because he was using heroin behind my back, along with all the mistresses I discovered after going through his phone. Realizing I am non-binary. Realizing I am queer and don't even like men. It's all a toss-up. Story 50. In The Sixth Sense, the plot twist for me was discovering that something is intended to be a surprise and a plot twist, which I had assumed throughout the movie. I essentially watched the movie incorrectly. Story 51. My wife, our child, and I come from 3 different countries and have ended up in a place new to all of us. Story 52. Being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis weeks before my 18th birthday was very unexpected, but in some ways, it saved me. I was going down a bad path, and the diagnosis meant I had to change the way I was living. I am 36 now, have an excellent job, am with the love of my life, and live very comfortably. Nobody can tell that I have been living with a chronic illness for half of my life. Story 53. My mom hid her cancer diagnosis from me for 3 months. She finally told me and then passed away 2 months later. After her death, my entire family fell apart more than it already was. I definitely wasn't expecting to grieve my mom so soon, let alone grieve my mom alone. My dad won't talk to me. My brother and sister are homeless and struggling with addiction. That's it. Story 54. I accepted that I was the wrong gender at 42 and told my sister, while she drove me home from my 4th stay at a voluntary psychiatric ward. That time 2.5 years ago when I made a plan to end my life once my financial savings ran out after I lost custody of my kids. My ex-fiancée had lied to me because she was still married, even though she proposed to me. After an argument in which I told her my son's life had not been easy for various reasons, she believed that my comments diminished her trauma. In response, she kicked me in the chest twice, hard enough to separate my sternum cartilage, which led me to the hospital the next morning for evaluation. To get back at me for some reason, while I slept after having 2 glasses of wine following our argument, she called the police and falsely claimed I had hit her, even though it was she who had assaulted me. The police arrested me and I was taken to jail. I was released the next morning, but the incident cost me custody of my kids and my job. I withdrew my retirement savings and decided that once the money ran out, I would end my life. However, before my funds were depleted, I met someone who genuinely loves and supports me, which I had never experienced before. I chose to remain alive, and now, 2 years later, we are engaged and own a home together. She accepts my faults and helps me manage them, just as I strive to do for her. I cannot use the phone, so she makes calls for me. She has epilepsy and cannot drive, so I happily drive her to work and pick her up and take her wherever she needs to go. I used to believe that loving someone meant giving them everything without asking for help for myself, as I saw my father do. Now I realize that this is not true love. Love is not about giving without receiving. It is about being able to ask for help when needed and knowing that my partner will not ridicule me for my weaknesses but will support me. I do the same for her. Additionally, love means being able to share with her that I was born the wrong gender and her being happy that I feel safe and free to be my true self. My ex-wife used to force me to attend man camp every year to learn what being a man meant. She was extremely religious. I could never express to her my desire to paint my nails, wear makeup, or dresses, or to admit that I wished I had grown up as a girl because I always wanted to be pretty. Instead of allowing me to be who I am, she demanded that I work full-time at a job that gave me panic attacks while she stayed at home. She wanted me to be less feminine and more masculine because that was her view of marriage. So either of those 2 situations, I suppose. Well, either of those 2 things, or when my mother abruptly took her own life without any warning, catching me off guard about her struggles. This happened a few months after I regrettably got married and bought my first home, and it was before I adopted my 2 children, which meant that my 2 beloved pets would never get to meet their gentle grandmother. I wish she had waited at least another year. I can't imagine her doing what she did if she had my kids in her life, as they are so gentle, kind, and loving. However, I hesitate to say that because I nearly followed in her footsteps years later. In my defense, my mother's death destroyed my life and led to a long-standing struggle with alcohol and deep-seated depression. I never recovered from it, but I can't do to my kids what she did to me, nor can I do to my fiancée what she did to my father. I am not angry with her. I feel compassion for her. I wish I had known what she was going through so I could have spoken to her about her problems. Perhaps she would still have made the same choice, but maybe she wouldn't have or would have done so years later, giving her enough time to meet my adopted children. The bullying in public schools is not only actions of children towards each other, but also includes many adult teachers who bully their colleagues daily. According to my dad, my mother expressed that she could no longer tolerate it and requested an emergency psychiatric session, but the doctor could not fit her in soon enough. leading her to make her tragic choice that very night. So, either of those three plot twists in my life, I suppose. Story 55. I texted the guy I had a crush on for 8 years, telling him I liked him even though we were in different countries separated by the Atlantic. He was supposed to respond with something like, "That's nice, have a nice life." So I could move on and dive back into online dating, putting my crush to rest. Long story short, we're married. Story 56. Being the first on the scene of my neighbor's death and having to perform CPR on a body that had been deceased for over 10 hours while being guided by emergency services over the phone. Story 57. Falling down 6 steps at 19 and bringing a chronic pain genetic issue to the surface changed my entire life plan. I wanted to pursue graduate school. Story 58. I thought I would marry an Asian woman, but I married a Hispanic woman. I thought I would be a marine biologist, but I became a nurse. I thought I would have great hair like my parents, but I'm bald. I thought I would stop playing video games, but it's my only hobby now. Story 59. Surprise half-sibling after my dad completed an ancestry DNA test. He was adopted, so he wanted to learn more about his family. It turns out an ex-girlfriend had a child that she never informed him about. When they took a DNA test with the same company, it indicated that they were relatives. Story 60. I was in line to play professional baseball. Health issues unexpectedly derailed my plans, but it was through those challenges that I met my wife. We have been married for over 10 years now. Story 61. One day, the love of my life and I were house hunting. That evening, we shared a romantic time with a bath, candles, and music. The next day, I got to sleep in. He got up, kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and went off to work. He came home a few hours later and told me I needed to leave. He never gave me a reason. I left, my hopes and dreams shattered. 24 years later, he still says he loves me. The only reason he ever gave is, I was being extremely immature. I still love him as much as ever, but I am married to and committed to another man. Story 62. I had to bury my ex because my son did not want him buried in a potter's field 5 states away after not hearing from him in 12 years. Story 63. At 19, I went from being a virgin, thinking I would be alone for all my life, to having 8 different sexual partners in a year. Ultimately, I found the love of my life at 20. I am now 30, approaching 10 years together. Story 64. Never having any luck with relationships, I resigned myself to being alone forever until a girl started talking to me randomly in my senior year of high school. It was my first relationship, and this year we will celebrate 14 years together and 6 years of marriage. Sometimes good things do happen. Story 65. Being a huge Nirvana fan in my teens, I started working as a live sound engineer in my 40s, with one of Nirvana's former sound engineers becoming my boss and teacher. Story 66. Discovering that my husband of 22 years and father of my children was having a romantic affair at a hotel out of town with a woman half his age. Story 67. It must be the divorce, not gonna lie. I was really into the relationship in season 1 and felt like things were going well when they finally got together in season 2. However, starting season 3 with a divorce seems like a surprising choice by the writers. I will never forgive them for breaking up my favorite couple, but I guess we will have to see where season 3 takes us. Story 68. So far, I have developed a crush on a new female coworker. My boss has assigned her to my workspace, giving me the opportunity to spend a day with her. Turns out she is a lesbian and has a girlfriend. However, the story gets better. I pretended not to be affected so she wouldn't suspect anything. I received feedback that my other single female coworkers believe we are either together or that something is happening between us because we get along so well. As a result, they have stopped communicating with me. I have obviously had to remove my workplace from my dating pool, but everything feels surreal. Having a crush on her was one thing, but we are slowly being forced to spend more time together. Story 69. Long COVID caused terrifying and traumatic symptoms such as constant nervousness, dizziness, debilitating brain fog, and extreme insomnia, among many others. Although there has been some improvement 3 years later, the effects on daily life remain significant. along with considerable post-traumatic stress associated with the worst period that lasted over a year. Story 70. My best friend had a crush on me for as long as we knew each other. He asked me out and now we are dating. Story 71. Switching majors halfway through university to pursue an interest with fewer career opportunities than my initial choice, then relocating to the other side of the world for a short-term job that turned into a long-term position, has led to me being in charge of my workplace many years later. It all worked out better than I expected. Story 72. My parents had their identity stolen in the late 1980s and lost everything. We went from living in a nice house in a quiet suburb to an apartment in a bad neighborhood. I was not allowed to go anywhere unsupervised, and my teenage years were taken from me. Story 73. Becoming chronically ill at 29 was a significant turning point in my life. I had to mourn my own death for a few years before I was ready to face the reality and start building my new life. I highly recommend that others give themselves time to grieve. By doing this, I was able to find joy in my new life and stopped comparing everything to my previous capabilities. Now I focus on how well I'm managing compared to the beginning. There are many advantages to being chronically ill if you view it from my perspective. Would I prefer to be healthy and normal? Absolutely. But that's not an option, so there's no need to dwell on that. Now I recognize that it has taught me to prioritize my life better instead of trying to do everything. I understand what brings me happiness and what is a waste of effort. I can sit in my messy house right now without being overly concerned about it, even with many people visiting in the coming days. Another positive aspect is realizing how generous people can be. I can't repay them, yet they come forward to help me without being asked. I spend my days with my dogs and taking care of myself. I have distanced myself from fake friends who left more than a decade ago, and now I have a strong support system. This means the opportunists don't even try to engage with me, as they know I have nothing to offer. Discovering who your true friends are is a significant benefit and has saved me so much time and energy. I have also learned to ask for help more and to manage my expressions of gratitude, as excessive thankfulness can be overwhelming. I am open about my life situation, which helps others understand me and fellow chronically ill individuals better, especially regarding the challenges of being dependent on others for basic living. Story 74. I confessed my feelings to a friend 16 years ago and discovered they were mutual. We are still together and as in love as ever. Story 75. I got together with the person whose family owns the farm next to my family's. I spent most of my life living within a half-mile of him, but I never really got to know him because our fathers do not like each other. We didn't connect until we were in our 40s. It still surprises me. Story 76. The woman I am with now for over 13 years is a cousin of a former roommate, and we have probably met a dozen times before we actually met. Story 77. My parents, both in their mid-50s, passed away unexpectedly and suddenly, 131 days apart. They were my best friends. I am so lucky they were mine. They taught me everything I know except how to live without them. Story 78. I am unemployed, posting on a forum about my job challenges, which led to an interview at a major gaming company next week. This opportunity has resulted in a significant career change and dramatic success. I am still pursuing my goals. Story 79. One boring Sunday night, as I was getting my things together for work, the best-looking girl in my town called me and asked if I wanted to go to a party with her. I was astonished. Unbeknownst to me, my best friend had told her I was interested and had given her my phone number. 39 years and 3 daughters later, we are still together, and she is still the most attractive woman in town. He is still my friend, too. Story 80. I reinvented myself into a different career and got off opiates. I was taking up to 300 milligrams of oxycodone a day and was on them for 15 years. I haven't touched any since 2017. I feel like I walked away from a train wreck. Story 81. I met someone while playing video games and moved across the country for him after dating for 3 months long distance. I was barely 20, which is pretty crazy. This move allowed me to gain much-needed space from my toxic family and establish boundaries I didn't even know I needed. I made significant progress with my mental health as a result. The relationship lasted a few years, And it wasn't all bad. I ended up staying in that state for over 10 more years and really thrived. Had I stayed in my hometown, I doubt I would be alive today. I was an incredibly depressed young person with no hope left. Story 82. My husband was diagnosed with glioblastoma in his early 40s. He went to the emergency room for a persistent headache. Our lives changed in an instant. Now everything in our lives has sharp edges. We never know when things will go wrong again. We never know if this will be our last holiday. Every time we visit our favorite restaurants or places that hold special meaning to us, I become emotional. Story 83. I did an internship at a newspaper in New Delhi during my undergraduate studies. On the first day, I was sent out on a reporting assignment with a photographer, and we have been married for almost 20 years now. Story 84. I spent 50 years feigning a happy relationship with my abusive parent, so far down the rabbit hole that it was unthinkable to bring it up to anyone. Stress, depression, and anxiety finally reached a breaking point, and to the surprise of everyone, including me, I confronted her, held my ground, went no contact, and talked to people about what she had done. It's been about 4 years now, and I haven't missed her for a single moment. I'm spending all of my vacation time with relatives I have always loved, liberated from having to devote my time to a miserable person who hurt me in ways that stuck with me for decades. It's made me much happier, freer, and more like myself. I am finally just myself. Story 85. Eventually, after 2.5 decades of life, I realized that I had no desire to be a parent, despite believing I wanted a wife and 1 or 2 children. I thought I wanted those things, but I was simply following the expectations of my parents and family. 15 years later, I am glad I had that realization. Story 86. I excel in logistics and planning. I am the person who managed 300 papers stacked on a partially damaged binder. Story 87. I started attending a weekly gathering late last year because I had heard that one individual attending had inadvertently contributed to my younger brother having a panic attack. I wanted to confront him about upsetting my brother. That individual and I have now been dating long distance for a couple of months while he is deployed overseas. Story 88. The realization that a person is shaped by their regrets and happiness, by what they built and broke. Sometimes, and often, seemingly contradictory feelings coexist together. Story 89. Getting engaged and having a baby with my best friend of 5 years. Every day I love him more. We still cannot believe we are together and have a baby. Story 90. I'm now back dating the very first boyfriend I ever had. We dated 10 years ago for a year, and I never thought we would get back together. He texted me to meet last month, and when we met, he professed his love for me all this time. Now here we are. If we get married, someone needs to tell the story to our children. Story 91. I was the manager of a Tim Hortons and expected it to be my career. One day, a high-ranking official from the government came into my store and gave me his card, asking me to call him. Next thing I knew, I was working for the Canada Revenue Agency and earning several times my previous salary. Story 92. I encountered difficulties at work about 15 years ago. It was featured in the local news for a full month, and I was certain I would lose my job. Not only did I keep my position, but I also received a financial settlement, a raise, and ultimately started a nonprofit organization to assist others facing similar issues at work. Story 93. Mr. Edward, have you ever had your son screened for autism spectrum disorder? No, why? There are a few behaviors he exhibits that match the criteria. Oh, that's just normal. I used to be just like that when I was a kid. He stares at me, waiting for the realization to occur. Story 94. My fiancé committed suicide last August, leaving me alone to raise our 3-year-old daughter. We miss him every day. I wish he could have seen how much we love him. Story 95. My brother struggled with suicidal thoughts for years. His mental health finally began to improve, but he died suddenly of a heart attack in his sleep at the age of 30. I had just started to believe that I would never receive that phone call saying he had taken his own life. Story 96. I started dating again after a difficult split from my ex-husband. I decided to try OkCupid because it was free, and I appreciated its unique algorithm for matches. The platform used random multiple-choice questions about various topics, ranging from politics to grooming habits, and asked what answers I would want from a potential partner and how important those answers were to me. This process provided a matching percentage and allowed me to see how both of us responded to the questions, making it easier to filter out incompatible candidates. One day, while bored, I answered around 200 questions. Unfortunately, I accidentally selected a preference for not dating someone of a different race, which is not true for me. A couple of days later, a man who was a 96% match messaged me. His initial message was, "I'm new to the area and I don't get it. Can you explain why so many girls who seem really cool and liberal answer that question that way?" There have been many times when I've seen that in answers, and obviously, it's a deal breaker. I was mortified because, again, that isn't reflective of my views. It also clarified why none of the non-white individuals I'd reached out to ever replied, which puzzled me. I explained my mistake, and we had a good laugh about it. However, the conversation eventually fizzled out. Around the same time, I was talking to another guy who seemed great, but when we tried to arrange a meeting, he had several excuses and eventually ghosted me after a few weeks. Since I hadn't gone on a date yet, I thought, forget it. I'm going out with the next guy who asks me. I just need to take the plunge. The 96% match had answered a few more questions, and we were now a 99% match. That very night, he messaged me again and continued our conversation with, "We should grab lunch to see what a 99% match is like." We had a date the following day, and we've been together for 12 years now, proving that our conversation was indeed worthwhile. In summary, I met my husband due to an accidental miscommunication regarding my dating preferences. Story 97. A close friend drank himself to death. His widow moved away, but we chat every couple of months. I invited her on a camping trip 14 hours away, and she unexpectedly came. We hit it off, dated long distance for a while, and her kids adore me. We are getting married on the 17th of May. Story 98. Finding out during a routine scan 2 weeks ago that our seemingly healthy baby had a condition that was incompatible with life, and having to terminate for medical reasons was unexpected. I am still struggling to believe it. Story 99. Breaking under the pressure of a corporate job. I entered a 9-month-long manic episode and ended up selling my troubled artwork at a failed flea market. Story 100. As a teenager, I was obsessed with the military and often fantasized about being a war hero. After joining, I was treated horribly, which radically changed my perspective. I left the military by pretending to be suicidal and eventually immigrated to Canada, a decision influenced by those early experiences. Today, I am the moderator of the subreddit Regret Joining. You can visit there to read my story. Story 101. Waking up to find my 28-year-old fiancé dead in our bed and discovering that it was due to natural causes. He was a healthy, fit man, and his heart just stopped beating. Story 102. I decided to go overseas for a year after graduating. I met a guy who was also having his overseas experience, and we had a no-strings arrangement because we weren't expecting to stay in the country long. We ended up moving in together and then moved to his home country. Today is our 18th wedding anniversary. Story 103. In high school, I was in love with my best friend but always thought I wasn't good enough for him. He was a quiet and shy nerd, while I was smart but rebellious and didn't go to university, whereas he did. I pined for him when he moved away to university and missed him, assuming he would meet the girl of his dreams in his mathematics classes. We stayed in touch, and it was painful to watch him flourish while I was still making poor life choices with a chip on my shoulder. Then he came back in the summer and told me he had always been in love with me. 15 years later, we've been married for 12 years and have 2 beautiful boys. He supported me while I earned my degree in my 30s, and now we both have the careers of our dreams. Story 104. My local nightclub was full, so I went to a place I rarely visited, and that's where I met my wife. Story 105. My previously unknown 22-year-old daughter contacted me. She found me through 23andMe. She is the result of a one-night stand I had while I was in college. Story 106. Accidentally getting a job in a massage parlor. I found it through the job center. I had been a receptionist in other offices, and that's what they advertised for. My first inkling that something was amiss was when I arrived for the interview and had to sit with three girls in lingerie while I waited. It was quite surprising. I took the job because I was financially struggling and spent the next 9 months working in brothels, answering the phone, cleaning up, and counting the cash. Story 107. I found out a month after my father died that his name on his certificate was totally different from what we called him. I was blown away. Story 108. I believed I was legally married for 12 years, only to find out he didn't submit the marriage license to the county clerk. He had one task. Story 109. Turning 40 years old, I felt great and looked great. On my 41st birthday, I was faced with unexpected chronic illnesses. It was life-changing. Story 110. The summer I graduated from high school, I was hanging out with a new group of people. One of my only female friends at the time had a boyfriend I hadn't met. I heard all about him, though. He was the captain of the football team, in the drama club, in the jazz band, and in the ensemble band. He pretty much sounded like someone I would not like. I automatically didn't like him before I met him, but when I met him, it was okay. We were at a house party, and there was this moment when he was brushing her hair, and I thought to myself, I am going to marry that man. I grew to actually be good friends with him. If you were doing illegal things, he was the person you wanted to be your trip sitter or designated driver. The following year, I was seeing someone and got pregnant at 19. I ended up forced into marriage because my parents were not supportive, and my ex was going to join the military but didn't. We were divorced by the time I was 25. I was always friends with the captain of the football team, and 17 years ago, I asked him out. We have been together ever since, and yes, I did marry him. Story 111. I was choosing between Tulane University and Emory University for law school. At first, I really thought I would attend Tulane, and I had a deposit check sitting on my desk for weeks but just didn't mail it. Then, for various reasons, I suddenly changed my mind about Tulane and committed to Emory. Within a month at Emory, I met my husband, and we ended up in Florida after law school. If I had gone to Tulane, it would have been with the intent of staying in New Orleans, and I would have been living there during Hurricane Katrina. I would have evacuated to my parents' house in Dallas and possibly relocated there due to the devastation. It is wild to think how a spontaneous decision changed my entire life. Story 112. During my freshman year of high school, I started dating a guy as a rebound. I figured we would hang out for a couple of weeks and go our separate ways like most high school relationships. Now, 17 years later, we are married, 10 years this year, have pets, good careers, and a 4-year-old daughter. Story 113. Growing up, I was told and believed that Armageddon was coming any day now, and it would arrive well before I reached adulthood. I am about to be 40. Story 114. I quit my job and decided to look for a fulfilling position after disliking every job I've ever had and feeling distressed when going to work. I found a position as a throwing coach, began working there, and fell in love with the job and the sport itself. Now I compete 3 to 4 times a week, and within a year and a bit, I became the best thrower in the country. 6 years later, I am the best in the Southern Hemisphere and ranked in the top 20 in the world. I have traveled to Canada twice from Australia to compete in the World Tournament. I have made hundreds of new connections with amazing people and now have a community that I can't live without. Story 115. I was cast in a television show that changed the trajectory of my career within months. I never could have guessed that would happen. Story 116. I had a debilitating crush on a friend of a friend for about 3 years. He was in a long-distance relationship with another girl and seemed pretty introverted and flighty, so I hid my feelings carefully to avoid making him uncomfortable and jeopardizing his connection to the group. I even made an effort to bring his girlfriend into our social circle, as she seemed to be struggling to connect with us. I confided in a few friends because it was eating me alive. I had never had a crush that strong, and it was making it difficult to be around him. I felt horrible for having feelings for a guy who was taken. One night at a party, one of the friends I had told made a joke at his expense about a secret she had also shared with me. I tried to help him feel less embarrassed by saying, "Don't worry, man. I already knew. She tells me everything." He responded by staring me in the eye and saying, "Yeah, she tells me a lot too." 2 weeks later, he broke up with his girlfriend and asked me out. 2 years later, we are living together, and it's incredible. Honestly, I was expecting to die alone. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.